This is the Getting Divorced Without Losing Your Mind podcast, where divorce coach Corey Shapiro helps you get creative and not reactive in your divorce. Tune in now to get the support you need to make it through this difficult time. Here's your divorce coach, Corey Shapiro.
Hey, welcome to the Getting Divorced Without Losing Your Mind podcast. This is Corey Shapiro. We're in January 2024. And why am I saying January? Well, January is divorce month. So for all of you new listeners who may have been served with divorce papers, you are in a good spot because in this podcast, I am acting as a divorce coach, helping you use your better self to make better decisions, to play the long game. And I know right now that is hard to do because your world is unraveling and it's stressful. And maybe you don't even want a divorce. Maybe you've been blindsided. Or maybe you did want a divorce, but you want a divorce in a collaborative way for the best interest of the children. You don't want a divorce war, do you? Do you? Well, if you do want a divorce war, I'm not sure if you're in the right podcast, because what we're trying to do here is get people to move on with their lives and achieve long-term divorce goals. Long-term. All right, today's topic, relevant for January. It's common mistakes that happen in a divorce. So let's get this going. We start off our podcast with quotes. I'm a big reader and I love quotes. So I always see in books, they start off chapters with quotes. And I think each episode of this podcast is like a mini chapter. And our quote this week is from none other than Dale Carnegie. I just had this book club and we read Dale Carnegie, so he's in my mind. And the quote is, "The only way I can get you to do anything is by giving you what you want." A little different. A little different. What are you saying? I want to get what I want. No, 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 no. I mean, I went to high-level negotiation classes and they say the same thing. I thought that professor was a genius. I didn't realize they're just stealing from Dale Carnegie. That book came out in the 1930s. So that professor didn't tell me anything new, but I thought he was really smart. And it is smart because what you want to do is look from things from the other person's perspective. If you can do that, whoo, you might not be listening to this podcast for long because you might be moving on. But if you dig in and you only look from your perspective, whew, that might be a real battle. All right, so let's move to our question. And if you have a question for the podcast, you want to submit a question for the podcast, please do so. We accept voice questions at question.gettingdivorced.org. Okay, our questions from Bentley goes like this. I was just served with divorce papers. What are the common mistakes I should avoid in my divorce? Well, Bentley, great question, timely question. The first thing I want you to think about is what I'm going to call lack of pre-work. Let's say you were blindsided, like so many people are, getting served with a divorce. And you're supposed to go to a divorce attorney's office and speak rationally about your divorce. That's not how it happens because you can't necessarily hear anything because you're still in trauma. You're grieving. And I read it takes about 2 years to grieve. Not 2 weeks, not 2 months, 2 years. But if the other person wants a divorce, they're not going to say, oh, I'm so sorry. I'll just wait 2 years until you grieve this divorce process and we'll just, wait. I'll come back. No problem at all. That's not how it's done. So the pre-work is for you doing what's necessary. And I would suggest if you are stressed, so super stressed, therapy's so helpful. Therapy's helpful. There is no shame in therapy. Think of it like this. If Roger Federer or Djokovic, if you're into tennis, these top tennis players can have a tennis coach, if they can have professionals who help them be better, you can definitely get better with a therapist. Don't think your attorney is going to be a pseudo therapist. They might help you, but they're not trained. I always say to people, I'm just an unlicensed therapist. And a lot of things, if you're really stressed, it's going to be beyond even a good attorney's pay grade. And that's what therapists do. They're much more patient and generally less expensive. So do the pre-work necessary. And If you need acceleration on that because you've been blindsided, as I said before, seek out professionals. Also, financial professionals. Not just therapy, not just your emotional health, but your financial health. A lot of people are scared about their financial future. Great time to go to a financial advisor. Okay, second one is what I'm going to call position polarization. That's where you're holding rigid beliefs. You might not necessarily know what you need. I didn't say want, need long term. And your positions could evolve. So I wouldn't be stuck on rigid polarization. That's why it's really good with the therapy, with the financial advisor. You can find out what you need. If you're using your position as a proxy to get back at your spouse, no. That's a divorce war. That escalates things. That causes a lot of problems. On a side note, that makes lawyers rich, or at least richer. So don't do that. Don't do that. All right. So third, financial concerns. A lot of people, when they start a divorce or anything, like, how much will it cost? How much will it cost? I don't think that's the right question. It's how much do I want to give? How much do I want to give? So if I want to become a doctor, am I willing to go to 10 years of school? Am I willing to do residency for many years, making not much money? The people who are like, oh, that's horrible, they don't want to really be a doctor. The people who understand that's the price to pay, that's the entry card. And if something is so important to you and you're listening to this podcast, you're like, Corey, we're fighting over custody. That's priceless. Okay. But if it's a difference of a few $100s or even $1,000 maybe in support, maybe there's another way to get that in a creative way. That's all I'm suggesting. All right. Fourth, time frame expectations. People don't understand how long a divorce takes. A contested divorce can take years. Put it in perspective. If your kid's 10 now, your kid might be going to college before a really heavily contested divorce is finished. You're like, oh, no, it's going to only be a year. Yes, maybe. Could be 6 months. It could be 3 months. But if you're rigid and you guys are fighting, it could go on forever. And you could even get divorced and you come back to court. It can never end. So be careful of your position and your time frame expectations. All right, last thing is don't limit your options. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to go to court. I only want to do mediation. Well, think of this. We don't know if we're dealing with a bear or a teddy bear. Okay, if we're dealing with a bear, we got to be careful because that bear might really hurt us. If we're dealing with a teddy bear, mediation, collaborative. But I wouldn't want to be in a room with a bear who's upset with me because I'm not sure I'm coming out of it. And you have to at least leave your options open. As I say, things can evolve. I think of it like I'm a guard at a prison, and I don't know if you're going to hurt me or not, but I want to go home at night peacefully. So I'm going to assume you are until you prove otherwise. So start out cautious and be pleasantly surprised as to shoehorning people right into mediation that might not necessarily be that population, that settlement population. Okay, so we move on to our coaching corner where we think a little deeply about these issues. And our coaching corner today is about 24-hour pause. If you listen to our recap of the book, the 24-hour pause is the bedrock of starting to think more creatively, less reactively. And what do? It's basically you're faking it till you make it because you get that text, you get that email, it pisses you off, and you are going to then just wait. If you're like, I can't wait, Google Lincoln, who did this process a long time ago before texts and emails, and he wrote letters. So if you want to write the text, write the email, fine, just don't send it. That's the key. All right. So listen, thank you for listening. I really am sorry if you are starting a divorce action here in January that you're part of this divorce month, but I hope this podcast can make you be more creative and less reactive in your divorce.
Thank you for tuning in to the Getting Divorced Without Losing Your Mind podcast with divorce coach Corey Shapiro. Divorce can be a difficult and overwhelming process, but it doesn't have to be. Corey's book, Getting Divorced Without Losing Your Mind, is here to help you gain clarity, composure, and a strategic mindset. Get it now as an ebook on Amazon or an audiobook on Audible, and unlock the power of these resources to make more informed decisions and gain better understanding of the process. This podcast offers general information only. It cannot replace legal advice. If you need tailored advice, contact an attorney licensed to practice in your area.